Well, should we start with Great Circle? Because we have both read it.
Oh my goodness. Okay.
And actually, there's a nice little follow-on because I think on our last pre-summer show, our summer reading, I had just started it and was saying about how much I was enjoying it. So it's now been shortlisted, somewhat to my surprise, because it is so enjoyable, for the 2021 Booker Prize. It tells the story of Marion Graves and her twin brother Jamie. They lose both their parents at quite an early age, and they are raised by their uncle, who's an artist, quite eccentric, and he lives in a remote cabin in the wilderness of Montana. And so they're growing up this kind of quite wild childhood, not unhappy necessarily, but they're sad because they've lost their parents and their life isn't easy. And Marion dreams of flight. She dreams of escape. She dreams of flight. And she encounters a female stunt pilot. So this is back in the 1930s. It's the very early days of aviation. And she encounters this female pilot, and that makes her realize that it is possible for women to fly. Women can be aviators. And this sets her off on this journey, you know, this great passion. She just has to learn to fly. She then manages to find a way to learn to fly. And then by whatever means she can, she contrives it so that she gets to fly. And there's a whole thing about bootlegging liquor, flying it over the border. She gets involved in that, and that enables her to go on these journeys. It flips back and forth between this story in the past and then a contemporary story set in Hollywood where a young actress is interested in Marion Graves and her story. There's some parallels in their life stories, and she ends up playing her in a film, and this is going to be her redemption because she had a kind of Hollywood falling from grace, and this film is going to be the thing that brings her back. So it flips between the two. It's quite long. It's about 600 pages, I believe.
Mm-hmm.
To me, I felt like I was flying through it. But
it was good long. It was enjoyable long.
Yeah, it's immersive. You get really drawn in. The characters were really strong and beautifully drawn. Not only Marion Graves, but also her brother. I thought the male characters were as interesting as the female characters. And it's all woven together very nicely. I don't know. It just really captured my interest. I don't know about you. How did you feel?
I thought this would be the perfect summer reading book. I love historical novels, so it felt right up my alley. And then I started it, and the first, 50 or so pages are actually the backstory of Marion and Jamie's parents and how they met. Mm. And it's quite dark. Mm. And I was like, oh, wait a second. Is this what I wanted? I also have a natural aversion to stories that span someone's entire life, generally. And that is what you get in this book. Not just the beginning of Marion's life, but even further with her parents. So I went from thinking, yes, this is the book for me, to being like, oh, I don't know. Maybe I'm going to put it down and switch. And I think maybe I did. But then when I came back to it, once we were in Montana with their childhood, it really worked for me. The Hollywood actress thread that goes through it is so jarring in terms of narrative voice. And I am not convinced it works. But I also kind of loved it. I don't entirely know why. Yeah, that's really interesting. I found I resented the interruptions of the contemporary story because it just wasn't nearly as interesting. And I really wanted to get back to Marion. She was the one I wanted to read about. I just was always a bit frustrated when it got to those kind of Hollywood bits and slightly speed reading to get through them. But then at the end, when it all comes together, I really appreciated why that contemporary story was there and how it worked. And I thought, well, that's good. It worked for me. Yeah, I think it worked for me. I think she didn't quite pull it off, but this is Bookshelf, so we don't want to get into it in too much detail. We should say that because it has been shortlisted for the Booker Prize, we will be discussing it again with friends of the pod, Sarah and Phil, on our Booker Prize show, which will be coming out, I guess, late October or so. Yeah, I'm looking forward to hearing what Sarah makes of it. And whether it holds up on that shortlist against the others.